Democrats and Republicans alike are trying to figure out how to rein in big tech, but our next guest is introducing new legislation to try to do just that. Washington Congresswoman Cathy McMorris Rodgers and Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan released draft legislation today that would overhaul Section 230 by removing big tech from those protections altogether. They say this will help hold big tech accountable for censoring Americans. Joining us now is Washington Congresswoman Cathy McMorris Rodgers, who is also the Republican leader of the House Energy and Commerce Committee. Congresswoman, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be with you.
All right, so this is something that legislation has been trying to do for a while. So what specific changes will be a part of this Section 230 overhaul?
Right. Well, this really is about holding big tech accountable. And as we've seen, big tech has become a destructive force. They've been censoring conservative speech in particular. And instead of promoting the battle of ideas and free speech, this proposal, and I'm really excited to be partnering with Jim Jordan on this legislation. He's the ranking member on Judiciary. I'm the ranking member on Energy and Commerce. And what it does is it pulls big tech and removes them from the Section 230 liability protections. So it would require them to be more accountable for their content moderation. It would provide more, it would require more transparency. It would give individuals an opportunity to be able to challenge their decisions. So bottom line, what we're doing is removing these immunity protections that they've been hiding behind on Section 230 to impose their own ideology when it comes to censoring conservative speech.
Congresswoman, one part of this overhaul includes forcing Congress to reevaluate big tech's behavior related to speech again in 5 years to ensure that they're staying accountable. So what's the significance of the 5 years?
Well, what it does is it allows us in 5 years then to evaluate whether or not we're getting it right, because these provisions are also very important to innovators. And so we're removing big tech from Section 230 and the protections under 230. But we want to make sure that for the new entrepreneurs and small businesses and startups, the potential competitors to these large companies, that they still can be innovative and provide that competition. So it's a balancing act. Our goal is to get it right. But what the 5-year provision allows is for Congress to readdress it, to come back and see, okay, is this what we wanted, or are these what are the unintended consequences, as we often talk about, and making sure that we get this right?
You know, we spoke to Washington Examiner technology reporter Nahal Christian earlier this week. We asked him if removing Section 230 was the solve that everyone hopes it is. He actually said that it would lead to more censorship because big tech would be afraid of multiple lawsuits since they would lose those protections. He also said this.
I think it's really been made clear that it's something that people think that they could do, politicians in particular, to try and point at, oh, we're solving this problem, but removing Section 230 is not going to be that effective, wand to magically wave.
All right, your response, is it going to be as effective as you hope?
I would say that there's no silver bullet. That's why but this is a draft piece of legislation that we're putting out there to get input on it. It does separate big tech from other businesses and startups, because our goal is to make sure that we're protecting small businesses and entrepreneurs in this country and the potential competitors, as I said. So we're wanting to get the feedback. We want to get this right, but we have a task force in the House that Kevin McCarthy has put together to look at what are these other provisions that would help hold big tech accountable. Provisions around further accountability, looking at big data, the importance of privacy legislation. So we're going to be the antitrust, the fact that they become so powerful. There's shared concerns about how big and powerful these companies have become. And this is one provision of many that we are going to be proposing and seeking feedback on to make sure that we ultimately accomplish the goal of holding big tech accountable.
Congresswoman, do you have bipartisan support for this?
Well, we're just getting started. I know that there's bipartisan support of holding big tech accountable. You look at issues around the impact of social media and their business models on harming children, especially their mental health, the increased depression and anxiety and suicides that we're seeing among our youth. And so oftentimes, principals, teachers, even the kids themselves are pointing to social media and the impact of social media on them and their mental health. And there's bipartisan support for taking action and looking at these business models and how they are driving and harming children. So that's one area for sure. I believe that there will be bipartisan support for more transparency measures. But I also am quite concerned about how the Biden administration and Democrats are also urging big tech to, under the guise of disinformation, take down political conservative speech. And that's where we are removing their liability protections so that they can be held accountable. And bottom line, if they're taking down speech under the name of disinformation, that's censorship. And the answer to political speech is more speech.
We'll certainly all be anxious to see where this goes. Congresswoman McMorris Rodgers, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.